Jenny has already booked her flight to America. Her treatment is waiting, her bags are almost packed, and somehow the person who suddenly seems most nervous about this trip is not Jenny but Sumit, because what should have been a simple medical journey takes a strange turn when Jenny begins wondering why her husband appears unusually interested in what her return to the United States could mean for him. Jenny believes the plan is straightforward. She will travel to America, get the treatment she needs, stay near people she trusts while recovering, and once she understands what the doctors recommend, she and Sumit can decide what comes next. She is not planning some permanent move, she's not talking about ending her life in India, and she certainly is not thinking about making major immigration decisions while dealing with her health. Sumit, however, seems to be thinking several steps ahead. He wants to know exactly where Jenny will stay, whether she still uses an American address, how long treatment might keep her there, and what would happen if the doctors told her she could not return to India for several months. None of those questions sounds especially strange by itself, because obviously a husband would want to know what could happen when his wife leaves for treatment. But Jenny starts noticing how often the conversation returns to America even when she is trying to discuss something completely different. For years, India has been the center of their relationship. Jenny was the one who moved, Jenny was the one who adjusted, and Jenny was the one who had to prove she was serious about building a future there, so she cannot understand why America suddenly seems so interesting to Sumit right when she is preparing to leave. Then things become even more uncomfortable. Whenever Jenny talks about the treatment, Sumit keeps bringing up what would happen if he needed to join her. At first, Jenny assumes he means visiting because that would make perfect sense, but the more questions he asks, the less this sounds like a husband wondering how to spend a few weeks beside his wife. Sumit starts asking about longer stays, whether marriage gives them different options, and what their life might look like if they eventually spent more time in America. Jenny finally stops him. She tells him she has not even reached the United States yet, she has not met with the doctors, and she has absolutely no idea whether she will be away for weeks or months, yet Sumit already sounds like he is discussing an entirely different chapter of their marriage. Sumit explains that he only wants to understand every possibility before something unexpected happens. And that sounds reasonable, maybe too reasonable. Because Jenny remembers how strongly Sumit once defended remaining in India, so she finally asks him the question she has been thinking about. Do you actually want to move to America? Sumit pauses just long enough for Jenny to notice before replying, I never said that. And Jenny immediately catches the wording. She did not ask whether he had said it. She asked whether he wanted it. So she asks him again, much more clearly this time. Do you want to live in America? Sumit tells her that right now the only thing he wants is for Jenny to become healthy. That is probably the safest answer he could give, and maybe he genuinely means it, but Jenny is no longer asking about her health. She is asking what Sumit wants for himself, and every time she does that, he somehow moves the conversation back toward her treatment. Later that evening, Jenny is packing while Sumit sits nearby using his phone, and everything looks completely normal until Jenny walks behind him and catches a glimpse of what he is reading. American immigration information, marriage-related paperwork, sponsorship information, questions involving spouses who are living in different countries. Jenny stops immediately and asks what he is looking at. Sumit closes the page, and that tiny reaction changes everything, because even if the search is completely innocent, suddenly locking the phone when Jenny walks over makes it look like he did not want her seeing it. Jenny asks why he closed the page. Sumit says he was finished reading. She asks what he was researching. He says it was nothing important. Now, Jenny definitely wants to see it. She tells him that if it truly means nothing, he should have no problem showing her. Sumit finally explains that he was only trying to understand what could happen if Jenny remained in America longer than expected. According to him, he does not want to discover later that his wife has to stay overseas while he has absolutely no idea what options they have. That explanation actually softens Jenny for a moment. Then she asks one question. How long have you been researching this? Sumit says, not long. Jenny wants a real answer. Did he start yesterday? Last week? After she booked the flight? Or before she even decided she was going? Sumit says he honestly cannot remember exactly when he first started looking. And Jenny does not like that answer because somehow Sumit remembers what he searched, why he searched it, and what he was worried about, yet the one detail he cannot remember is when all of this began. Instead of starting another argument, Jenny quietly goes back to packing. That silence bothers Sumit more than shouting would, because he can see she has started putting something together in her head. The following morning, Jenny begins rebuilding the timeline. She remembers Sumit previously asking whether she still had an American address. At the time, the question seemed harmless. Then she remembers him asking whether she still had banking connections there. Later, he wondered whether Jenny's family would ever let them stay temporarily if they needed to return to America. Jenny ignored those conversations because Sumit had never appeared particularly interested in moving. Now they sound different. Over breakfast, she tells Sumit she believed his interest in American immigration only began after the treatment became serious. Sumit answers, "I never said that." There it is again. Technically careful, emotionally terrible. Jenny is becoming increasingly frustrated because Sumit keeps answering questions in a way that avoids actually lying while also avoiding giving her the complete story. She reminds him that America was supposedly never part of their future. She moved to India because their life was meant to be there. She accepted sacrifices because that was the plan, and now suddenly she needs treatment in America, while Sumit appears to have developed a detailed interest in how their marriage could function there. Sumit says circumstances change. Jenny looks directly at him and asks, "My health changed, but why did your thinking change before my health changed?" That question hits him. Now Jenny is not only questioning what Sumit has been researching. She is questioning when the interest started. Sumit says he always understood America could eventually become one possibility for them, but Jenny points out that casually knowing something is possible is very different from privately researching how it could happen. Then she asks whether Sumit has already spoken to anybody about it. He hesitates. Eventually, he admits that he asked someone a few questions. Jenny puts her food down. This is new information. Sumit explains there was no application, no secret process, and no official move happening behind Jenny's back. According to him, he simply spoke with somebody who understood immigration better and asked what possibilities married couples might have. Jenny cannot understand why her husband would discuss their future with another person before discussing it with her. Sumit says Jenny was already stressed about treatment, and he did not want to give her another thing to worry about. Jenny immediately challenges that logic. If he knew the conversation might upset her, hiding it was obviously not going to make things better once she eventually found out. Sumit insists he wanted to understand everything first. Jenny asks what exactly he needed to understand. If his only concern was visiting his wife during treatment, why was marriage-based immigration part of the conversation? Why was sponsorship being discussed? Why was he looking at longer-term possibilities when Jenny herself had not even decided how long she would stay? That is where Jenny's concern becomes much more serious. She still does not know that Sumit has done anything wrong. The problem is that the future inside Sumit's head suddenly looks much further developed than the future inside hers. Jenny thought they were discussing treatment and a plane ticket. Sumit appears to have been considering what could happen afterward. There are two completely different explanations. The first one actually makes Sumit sympathetic. Jenny is leaving the country for medical care. Nobody knows how long she'll be gone, and Sumit may simply be frightened that circumstances could separate them for months. If that is his motivation, researching America is not some master plan. It is a husband trying to prepare for uncertainty. But there is another possibility Jenny cannot ignore. What if America was already on Sumit's mind before her medical situation gave him the perfect reason to discuss it openly? If that is true, Jenny wants to know why. Was Sumit becoming exhausted by family pressure in India? Was he thinking differently about money and opportunities? Had he quietly begun imagining a life he once rejected? Or had Jenny's connection to America suddenly become more valuable to him than she realized? Before Jenny gets an answer, another detail appears. While searching for paperwork she needs for the trip, Jenny discovers a folder containing their marriage certificate, identification copies, and other important documents. None of that is strange on its own, but several documents have been copied and arranged together in a way that catches her attention. She asks Sumit when he organized everything. He says recently. That word again. Recently. Jenny asks whether these documents are connected to the immigration conversations Sumit admitted having. He says some of them might have been mentioned. Jenny stares at him. Might have. Sumit corrects himself and says yes. Certain documents came up when they discussed what married couples might eventually need. Jenny's anger changes into something quieter. She reminds Sumit what she has given up for this marriage. She left her old life, moved across the world, dealt with his family's resistance, and repeatedly chose India because Sumit made her believe that was where their future belonged. Now she is standing inside their home holding paperwork that makes it appear he has been preparing for another possibility without ever including her. Sumit tells Jenny she is connecting things that may not belong together. Jenny admits that could be true, but she asks why he keeps giving her reasons to connect them. Then she asks the question he seems least prepared to answer. Were you thinking about America before you knew I needed treatment? Sumit responds that planning would be too strong a word. Wrong answer. Jenny is not interested in debating terminology. She wants to know whether the idea existed before her medical trip. Finally, Sumit admits that he had already been curious about different possibilities for their future. And there it is. Not proof of some secret scheme. Not proof that he has done anything illegal. But confirmation that America was already somewhere in Sumit's thinking. Jenny immediately realizes that his earlier explanation was incomplete. At first, he made it sound like Jenny's treatment caused him to start researching what might happen if they were separated, but now he admits the curiosity came earlier. Both things could technically be true. Emotionally, however, they feel completely different. Jenny asks why he never told her. Sumit says America has always been an emotional subject between them. Jenny responds that America is not the real problem. Secrets are. Sumit becomes defensive and says he cannot spend his entire life being judged through mistakes from their past, but Jenny reminds him that this is happening right now. The research is current, the conversation happened recently, and the documents are sitting in her hands. Sumit says the folder proves nothing. Jenny agrees. That surprises him. She says the documents themselves prove absolutely nothing, but Sumit's changing explanation is what bothers her. Every time Jenny asks another question, another piece appears. First, he was only worried about her treatment. Then he had been curious before the treatment. Then he admitted speaking to someone. Then Jenny discovered the documents. What she wants to know is how many parts of this story still have not been mentioned. That is when Sumit finally stops discussing immigration and admits what he is really afraid of. He tells Jenny he is terrified she'll go to America and decide she does not want to return. Suddenly, the entire argument changes. Sumit reminds her that America has Jenny's family, people who already know her, familiar surroundings, and a support system she understands. If treatment keeps her there longer than expected, Sumit worries she may eventually ask herself whether returning to India still makes sense. He says every time Jenny discusses the trip, he hears relief in her voice. She talks about familiar people. She talks about getting support. She talks about feeling safer during treatment. And Sumit has been quietly wondering whether Jenny might discover that her life is easier without him. For the first time, Jenny sees genuine fear instead of carefully chosen explanations. Maybe Sumit is not searching for a way out of India. Maybe he is terrified Jenny will find one. That makes everything more complicated. Because if Sumit looked obviously dishonest, Jenny's decision would be easier. But instead she sees a husband who appears frightened of losing his wife, while also hiding conversations that she believes should have included her. Jenny tells him that if fear was the real reason, he should simply have admitted it. He should have told her, "I am scared you might leave and never come back." Instead, he researched possibilities in silence. Sumit says he did not want to make Jenny's medical situation about himself. Jenny responds that hiding things has made the situation about him anyway. Then she makes her decision. The flight is still happening. She is not canceling it. She is not delaying treatment, and she is not remaining in India just because Sumit feels uncomfortable. But Jenny adds one important boundary. While she is in America, she will not make any immigration decisions connected to Sumit. She will not begin paperwork, sign anything, or make major promises while she is dealing with treatment and still uncertain about their future. Sumit immediately says he never asked her to. Jenny answers, "Not yet." That hurts. Sumit asks whether she genuinely believes he married her because he wanted America. Jenny pauses before admitting she no longer knows exactly what she believes. That answer is devastating because she is not accusing Sumit of anything definite. She is admitting that their trust has been damaged enough for the question to exist. The following day, Sumit appears completely different. He makes Jenny tea, helps with her luggage, checks the flight details, and reminds her to keep her medical papers somewhere easy to reach. For several hours, there is absolutely nothing suspicious about his behavior. He simply looks like a husband struggling with the fact that his wife is leaving for treatment. And that makes Jenny question herself again. Can somebody genuinely love you and still hide something important? Of course. Can somebody genuinely fear losing you while also making plans that could benefit them? Absolutely. Those feelings can exist at the same time. Jenny eventually asks Sumit whether he would still consider America if her treatment went perfectly and she returned to India. Sumit says he does not know. Jenny asks why the answer is not simply no. Sumit admits the last few weeks have made him rethink their future. Health changes, people get older, financial situations change, and family relationships change. Jenny listens before asking the question Sumit has no easy answer for. Why couldn't you rethink it when I was the one asking? That brings years of frustration back immediately. Why was America impossible when Jenny felt lonely? Why was it impossible when she missed her family? Why was it impossible when Jenny was making the sacrifices? But now that Sumit might see some benefit in going, America suddenly becomes something worth considering. Sumit says he never intended it to look that way. Jenny responds that intention does not erase timing. The morning of the flight finally arrives. Sumit asks how long she thinks she will stay. Jenny says she does not know. He asks whether she can promise to return as soon as doctors clear her. Jenny says she cannot promise something before she understands the treatment. Sumit asks for something simpler. Can you promise you're coming back? Jenny hesitates. Then she says, I plan to. Not yes. Not absolutely. I plan to. The exact kind of careful wording Sumit has been using with her. And he immediately notices. On the drive to the airport, Sumit suddenly tells Jenny he never wanted her medical situation to become an opportunity. Jenny turns toward him. An opportunity for what? Sumit realizes how that sounded and explains that he means an opportunity to completely change their lives. Jenny asks why that thought was even in his mind. Sumit finally says what he believes Jenny is thinking. She thinks he saw her trip as his opportunity to reach America. Jenny asks directly, did you? Sumit says no. Finally, a direct answer. He tells Jenny that if America mattered more than their marriage, he would have spent years trying to leave India instead of fighting to build their life there. That is a fair point. But Jenny reminds him that his own explanation now confirms he was asking questions before her flight. Sumit says questions are not plans. Jenny answers that hidden questions begin looking like plans when the person asking them refuses to explain them. They arrive at the airport and the tension feels heavier because neither one has enough time to resolve anything. Sumit hugs Jenny and asks her to call after security. He tells her, whatever you think right now, I love you. Jenny says she loves him too. And for one moment, maybe this really does look like fear mixed with terrible communication. Then Jenny's phone vibrates. She checks the screen. It is a message connected to the immigration questions she has been trying to understand. Her expression changes. Sumit asks what happened. Jenny reads the message again before turning toward him. You told me this was recent. The information suggests Sumit's first conversation about possibly relocating to America happened months earlier, before Jenny booked the flight and before treatment became the reason she was returning. Sumit immediately says there is an explanation. Jenny almost laughs. There's always an explanation after I find something. Sumit insists the earlier conversation was casual. Somebody mentioned America, they discussed possibilities, and Sumit asked a few questions. Jenny asks why he previously said he could not remember when everything started. Sumit explains that he did not consider that old conversation part of the same situation because he was not actively planning anything.